The door to London did not so much open as remember how to be ajar. A seam of air shivered in an alley off Blue Boar Court, and from that patient slit in reality stepped a traveller. Boots road-bitten, coat rain-shined, hat cocked just rakishly enough to annoy angels with stricter tailoring codes. No one saw him arrive. The fog had better things to do. Uriel, Aaron to a teasing few, tapped mud from his heels and glanced at the swollen violet evening. Somewhere a bell argued with itself about the hour. He adjusted the strap of a worn leather satchel, inside which something quietly sang like a prayer in a wine glass. He smiled. "London," he said to the fog, "you lovely moth-eaten doily." Down the lane, a tavern sagged between two brick buildings, as if scandalized by its own roof. Its sign depicted a wolf and a lantern. The lantern looked terrified. This, Uriel knew, was a local sort of haunt, the sort where the patrons were haunting even before they died. The door creaked open on a room of oily candlelight and concentrated vice. A fiddler soared away in the corner at a tune that sounded like a dare, and the air smelled of spilled gin and complicated intentions. From the corners, the only places the light didn't trust, Uriel's second sight picked out silhouettes bending over other silhouettes with the bad manners of thirsty leeches. A gentleman in a powdered wig dabbed delicately at a neck with a lace handkerchief, like a sommelier judging legs on a cabernet. A highwayman with fangs compared cufflinks with a duchess who had misplaced her reflection. The tavern keeper, a barrel with eyebrows, pretended not to notice that several customers lacked pulses, but made up for it in tipping. Uriel took a table near the hearth, where the fire burned as if it knew better. He doffed his hat and let the satchel rest on the scarred wood. The tavern went on ignoring him the way a cat ignores a thunderstorm. He watched, quietly counting. 1, 2, 3 victims to the right, woozy but breathing. 2 upstairs if the floorboards could be believed. No need to flash a sword. He had brought something older than steel. From the satchel, he withdrew a chalice wrapped in linen. Even under London's soot, it gleamed with a hush. Tonight, the homily of old Ethiopia rode with him. The memory of a wing dipped at the foot of the cross. The mingled blood and water gathered. The sprint with Michael across the world, blessing as they went until churches sprang up like dawn. Uriel pinched the rim of the cup as one might pinch the tail of a tune, and with a murmured joke only angels laugh at, he veiled its light. To mortal eyes, and immortal eyes with terrible taste, it now resembled a handsome vessel of very promising port. "Evening. What'll you be having, sir?" "A round," Uriel said. "For the house. The dark corners first." He slid a pair of honest coins across, each stamped with a kingdom that no mint would recognize, but every conscience did. The waiter blinked, pockets suddenly heavier. The fiddler's tune tripped into a hiccup as the tavern keeper bellowed, "Compliments of the traveller!" Heads, some attached, some merely invested, turned. Uriel stood, lifted the chalice as if proposing civilization, and smiled with all the warmth of a lamplighter who takes his time. "My friends," he said, "London's night is long and the throat is short. Permit me to share a modest vintage, very old, an evening to remember and a morning you can endure." "Name your bottle," sneered the wigged gentleman. "We are not easily impressed. A rare claret, hints of cedar, frankincense and forgiveness, notes of sunrise." A tasting then. Uriel drifted table to table, the chalice never sloshing no matter who jostled it. Each time the liquid touched a crystal rim, the room seemed to inhale. The first to sip was the highwayman, a man who could pick a pocket through a sermon. He tipped the chalice, swallowed and froze. His eyes went wide. He looked at his hands as if they had just confessed to something. Then he did the most shocking thing a highwayman can do in a tavern. He apologized to the furniture. "Eh," muttered the Duchess, "staged." She snatched the cup and drank as if defying a sunrise. There was a soft sound like a moth remembering how to be a star. The Duchess's reflection snapped back into the window pane, took one look at her and fainted with relief. "Oh," she said, touching her throat. "Oh." She fumbled in her purse and began tipping the staff like a woman who had just discovered employees were people. Fang after fang tasted, and peculiarities ensued. One vampiric poet, forever stuck on the same gloomy stanza, sipped and immediately finished his poem with an ending that didn't involve despair or millinery. Another, who prided himself on never entering a church, suddenly felt a keen, irresistible urge to fix crooked hymnals and oil squeaky pews. In the far corner, a brood of newly turned aristocrats caught their reflections in a blackened kettle and burst into awkward, heartfelt, mutual compliments. "Your humanity," one stammered, "is showing." "Thank you," the other said, and then, utterly undone, ordered lemonade. Not all changes were instant. Some vampires discovered their fangs wobbling like loose baby teeth, then settling into canines more suitable for steak than sin. A few clutched their chests, alarmed, as hearts they'd misplaced resumed employment. One leaned over his victim, sniffed and blanched. "Madam," he said, "you need broth." He tucked his cloak around her like a reformed thundercloud. The tavern itself began to behave. The candles stood up straighter. The floorboards agreed to be less theatrical. Even the fog outside pressed its nose to the panes and tried to look nonchalant. Uriel poured and poured, but the chalice never emptied. "Trade secret," he murmured to the astonished waiter, who had just discovered he could count without moving his lips and was quietly planning to do so for fun later. When a pale scholar in the corner sniffed and said, "This bouquet is unsettlingly hopeful," Uriel leaned in confidentially. "Yes," he said, "it pairs well with amends." There were holdouts, of course. A pair of ancient brothers in tattered velvet huddled beneath the staircase, consulting a ledger of grudges big enough to stun oxen. "We don't drink blessings," hissed one. "Perish the thought," said Uriel cheerfully. "This is only a possibility." They glared. Pride tried to sharpen itself and found it had misplaced its whetstone. "Very well," the elder snapped. He took the smallest sip ever attempted by lips. It was enough. The ledger slid from his hands and burst, not into flame, but into daisies. He stared at the flowers as if they'd levied a tax. "What have you done?" he whispered. "Offered what was offered to me," Uriel said, and his smile was all hearth. "I promise it is not poison. It is the antidote." Upstairs, the rescued began to stir. Uriel, in the bustle, drifted like a kindly rumor, checking pulses, tucking blankets, leaving coins whose only inscription was trust. He paused by the fiddler, whose tune had softened into something like gratitude. "Play that in the daylight," Uriel suggested. "You'll like how it lands." The tavern keeper, polishing a glass so diligently it threatened to become a philosophy, cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, voice thick, "I don't know what you poured, but I'll have it on the menu." "It doesn't bottle well," Uriel admitted. "Best served at the exact moment you're tired of what you've become." "Cost?" "Whatever you owe," Uriel said, "paid forward." The room had changed. Not into a chapel, London would never stand for that, but into something honestly possible. Fangs in pockets, debts on tables, apologies fluttering like startled pigeons, and somehow finding roost. Uriel lifted the chalice one last time. "To life," he said. A chorus, some rough, some velvet, some newly mortal, answered, "To life." He wrapped the chalice and tucked it away. No fanfare, no curtains. Angels don't bow, they tidy. He straightened a chair, righted a stool, left a note for the milkman about the alley's pothole. On his way out, he paused beside a mirror and winked at the Duchess's reflection, which winked back with a blush it had been saving since 1692. In the alley, the fog made room again, like a doorman who knows when not to ask questions. The seam in the air found its courage and opened. Uriel stepped toward it, then glanced over his shoulder. Behind him, the tavern sign, the wolf and the lantern, had changed. The lantern no longer looked terrified. The wolf appeared to be considering a career in shepherding. "Over mind," Uriel said to the thin place between worlds. kindly note, London is presently unbitten." He cocked his hat as if tipping it to Michael somewhere annoyingly punctual, and walked into the scene, which closed with the quiet satisfaction of a job thoroughly started. No one saw him leave, but for a long while after, Whitechapel had better evenings than it could explain.